I am Will Scott. You are watching Houston Texans Today by Chat Sports, where we are always covering the latest Houston Texans news and rumors. And be sure to subscribe to the channel because we're going to have you covered with the NFL draft fast approaching in about a week and a half. The Texans have the number 2 overall pick, so hit that subscribe button below for more free Houston Texans YouTube videos. Speaking of the draft, General Manager Nick Caserio had a press conference this morning and said at that press conference that the Texans have received calls about the number 2 overall pick in this month's draft. Here's what he said. We've received some calls about the number 2 pick. I think our job and responsibility is to listen and to not rule anything out. I think when the end result comes that Thursday, we'll be prepared to go either way. We're open to listening. Nick, man, what are you doing? This would be absolutely horrendous if the Texans traded back in this draft and did not take a quarterback at number 2 overall. I don't care if this is an offer that is just absolutely crazy. You should not be trading back. You should be taking a quarterback, and you should be taking one at number 2 overall. Taking a look, though, if they were to trade back, here are some teams that might have called Houston about trading up. 2 of these teams in the division, as we begin with the Indianapolis Colts. They have the number 4 overall pick. They also need a quarterback. They're apparently pretty high on both Stroud and Young, so maybe they'll trade up. But if the Texans were to trade down and give C.J. Stroud to the Colts, yeah, we'd be in shambles. The Las Vegas Raiders, number 7, they're very interested in Stroud. I know they signed Jimmy Garoppolo, but they have been linked to Stroud many of times. The Atlanta Falcons have said Desmond Ridder's the guy, but at the right price, if they can move up, take a quarterback, maybe they would do it. The Tennessee Titans have apparently had conversations about trading up with the Arizona Cardinals at number 3. And then the Washington Commanders could be a dark horse team to move up. They said Sam Howell's the guy. I don't know if I'm sold on that. So we'll see what happens. But those are 5 potential trade partners if the Texans were to trade back in this draft. And the Texans, as we've heard, reportedly are all in on Bryce Young, but Bryce Young looks like he's probably going to Carolina at number 1 overall, and they're not sold on any other quarterbacks outside of Young, so they're having doubts about what to do at the number 2 overall pick. Maybe trade back, maybe take a defensive player like Will Anderson, but that is the situation right now. It appears to be at least situation in Houston. And I think a lot of people are kind of thinking like, okay, well, maybe the Texans aren't sold on any quarterbacks this year outside of Young. So maybe they'll just tank again this year and get Caleb Williams or Drake May next year. You can't be thinking about that if you're Houston. You got to start winning now. This has been a long couple of years in Houston. The fan base wants to see a winner. The fan base wants to see a franchise quarterback. They do not want to see a Davis Mills again, his 3rd year as a starter. So I think the Texans just have got to take a quarterback at number 2 overall, stay in that spot. And look, I mean, the Texans have added a lot of talent this offseason. This is a much better football team. There's no guarantee that you're going to be in a position next year to draft Caleb Williams or Drake May. So you might be right back in this boat like, oh, we can't get our guy. Let's just not take a quarterback again and move on to 2025. We cannot be doing this. We did this for so many years before the Texans drafted Deshaun Watson. Remember that? We went from Ryan Mallett. He was a big signing. Ryan Fitzpatrick, Brian Hoyer. I'm tired of it. The Texans have got to take a quarterback, number 2 overall. This is not complicated. If Bryce Young is off the board at 1, you take C.J. Stroud at 2. Not Will Levis or Anthony Richardson. C.J. Stroud at number 2. That needs to be the pick if Bryce Young is off the board. But, man, if the Texans are really having the conversation about, let's run it back with Mills or Keenum and just take a quarterback next year. What if you win 5 or 6 games next year? You're not going to have a top 4 pick, top 5 pick. Why are they overcomplicating this, producer Patrick Seaman? It's really driving me crazy. Shambles is a word we use a lot here at Chat Sports. What would be your shambles level if the Texans traded back? Scale it 1 to 10 down in the comments section. What would be your shambles level if Houston traded back? And I understand Chicago got a massive haul to trade out of number 1, but they don't need a quarterback. They have Justin Fields, and they also only added 1 future first by trading back 8 spots. So it might be a similar haul that the Texans get But like I said, there's not going to be an offer that I'm taking if I'm Nick Caserio about trading back from number 2. Dan Brugler of The Athletic said this: I'm told there isn't a unanimous belief among the Houston coaches that an available quarterback will be worthy of this pick at number 2. At this point, I'm still leaning Stroud, if not to Houston, then probably to another team that comes up for him. But my final mock next week might have Alabama's Will Anderson Jr. or Texas Tech's Tyree Wilson or a different quarterback here. And I know I said on this show many of times, I'm not buying this noise. It's all bullshit. There's been way too much noise about the Texans trading back or not taking a quarterback. We've just kept hearing it, and when there's a lot of noise, there's a lot of smoke, there's typically something there. Peter King of NBC Sports said this: I hear that Houston's souring on Stroud stuff. I hear the Houston souring on Stroud stuff, and I just can't believe the Texans wouldn't take a quarterback high in this draft. How would Cal McNair answer to the disaffected season ticket holders if, after passing on a QB with the 3rd and 15 picks in the first round last year, he passes on a quarterback at number 2 this year? It's the job of coaches to get the best out of their players, and there's certainly enough potential in C.J. Stroud. Should he be there for Houston at 2, for the Texans coaches to make a good NFL quarterback out of him? And I could not agree more. It's impossible to watch the tape on C.J. Stroud and not see the potential he has. He has a very high ceiling. Now, do I like him more than I like Bryce Young? No, but I like him a hell of a lot more than Anthony Richardson or Will Levis, and I like him a lot more than taking somebody else who's not a quarterback at number 2 overall. The Texans cannot overthink this, and this might be a catastrophic mistake if they trade back or do not take a quarterback at number 2. It would set the franchise back years, and the fan base that you have tried so hard to get back in NRG, fan base that's been disconnected for the last several years in Houston. You hired DeMeco Ryans. That was a good step. You've made some good moves in free agency, but you can kiss that all goodbye. When I'm talking about the fan base support, if you trade out of that number 2 pick, it would be catastrophic for the Houston Texans organization. And Nick Caserio is going to have some tough questions to answer if that is the case. Speaking of Nick Caserio, there's been a lot of rumors that he could be leaving after this draft. We talked about it last week. He was asked about that today at this press conference. Field Yates tweeting, Texans GM Nick Caserio addresses rumors he might be leaving the team post-draft. Quite frankly, I'm almost embarrassed I have to. I sort of feel like Leonardo DiCaprio in Wolf of Wall Street. I'm not leaving. There's never really been any substantive discussions of the sort. He's not leaving. He's Leonardo, Wolf of Wall Street. He's not effing leaving. So Nick Caserio putting those rumors to bed. It appears that he will not be leaving the Houston Texans here after the NFL draft. And like I said last week, this just didn't make any sense from the jump. It wouldn't have made sense for the Texans to fire him. It might have made some sense like earlier on this offseason if you wanted to clean house and hit the reset button. It doesn't make any sense now. Right after the NFL draft, you're going to fire the guy that just brought in all these players. That would not have made any sense for the Texans. Not to mention Caserio, I think, has done a pretty good job as GM. Just look at some of the recent free agency moves he's made. Look at some of the draft picks he's made. It also didn't make sense for Nick Caserio. Going back to New England, where he's not going to have total control, where Bill Belichick's still going to be the guy making personnel decisions, it did not make sense for either Caserio or the Texans to move on at this time. But if the Texans do not draft a quarterback, I might have a different opinion on Nick Caserio's future in Houston if the Texans do not draft a quarterback. And there's been some rumors that apparently Caserio in the front office kind of leaning maybe toward not drafting a quarterback, and Cal McNair's like, no, you're taking a quarterback. So if there is friction between ownership and the front office, it might be on what they're going to do at number 2 overall. Grade Nick Caserio as a GM. Type A, B, C, D, or F down in the comments section. I'm giving him a B. He might have been like B minus, C plus range coming into this offseason, but I think he's B plus. At least a B, maybe a B plus for me right now. and hopefully he can get up to an A here after the draft. If he takes anybody else except C.J. Stroud or Bryce Young at number 2, it's not going to be pretty. Not going to be pretty on this channel. I can just promise you that. Be sure to subscribe. Your boy's from H-Town. He's passionate about the Texans. He wants to see the Texans do well. He wants to see the Texans fan base continue to be kind of re-energized here, like we've seen in the past couple months after the hiring of DeMeco Ryans, Texans legend, to be the head coach. But I can tell you, the Texans fan base is not going to be happy if the Texans do not take a quarterback at number 2.